The iPhone 12 Pro Max felt like the final form of the 12 series this year. Not only does it have the bigger screen and bigger battery that you expect out of a Max model, it also has an upgraded camera. And so in many ways, it actually feels like a significant upgrade over the 12 Pro, and it's only $100 more. But is this big phone worth its big price? Let's talk about it. This is Innoiso, and this is the iPhone 12 Pro Max review. Before we get started, let me just point out that I'm not the typical Apple fan. While I do enjoy using iPhones and MacBooks, they're not my normal devices to use. More often I'll use Windows laptops and Android phones. But that's not to say I didn't dive in when I was using this phone. I not only used it with Apple AirPods Pro and AirPods Max, but I also committed to my MacBook Air that I've been using for the past couple months. And so while I didn't use iMessage or iCloud, I do feel like I really got ingrained in the Apple experience. And while I do appreciate the Apple ecosystem for what it is, I won't be focusing on it too much for this review. The iPhone 12 Pro Max is unapologetically large and opulent. While I said in my 12 Pro review that I didn't like the sidewalls because it actually made it a little bit less comfortable to sit in your hand, I do appreciate the squared off edges in order to grip onto. And I think it's better than the Note 20 Ultra that I reviewed earlier this year. But that being said, I actually find quite often that the edges slide through my fingers quite frequently when I don't have this phone in the case. And while I have been using one of Apple's silicone MagSafe cases, I'm not the biggest fan of it, and I'd much rather just use it without a case. But this phone is so big that I really can't fit in one hand comfortably anyways. And so I'm usually having to use it with two hands. So in two hands, ergonomically, it's fine. I also mentioned in my 12 Pro review that the side rails can get quite greasy and fingerprinty because they're so glossy. And while I thought that's not too big of a deal for most people, when I was trying to sell that phone, there were several buyers that actually mistook a reflection on the side rail as a crack in the device, just because it's so glossy and reflective. By the way, in future videos, I'm going to be sharing discounts on the phones that I review on my eBay store page, so be sure to get subscribed to catch those discounts. All in, the design strikes me as premium and high quality, more so than most other phones on the market. Now, notably, the camera bumps aren't the most attractive things, but at least it's significantly shallower than, say, the Note 20 Ultra, and I frankly still can't get over the notch. Insert my commentary here on what I think about the notch. And you know what's really inconvenient when you're trying to unlock your phone hundreds of times a day, but you just can't because something's in the way? Over the past 8 or 9 months, it's been increasingly frustrating to bring an iPhone with me out into public because every single time I unlock my phone, I've got to enter in my passcode. And while it seems like a tiny bit of friction, having to do that over and over again, hundreds of times a day, just adds a lot of time and frustration to me. This notch does take up a smaller portion of the display and really is contained in what is basically the notification bar at the top of the screen. And so in many ways, it shouldn't get in the way as much as the 12 Pro. But when I was using this phone to just watch content or browse through Twitter or browse through my email, I still noticed the notch being there. Not nearly as much as the 12 Pro, but it was a little bothersome for me. And I kind of wish that I could just turn off the entire top and make a full bezel like you can on many Android devices with notches. Where my Note 20 Ultra did a lot to replace my tablet usage, I tried multiple times to just set up the 12 Pro Max for watching sessions. I just set it up against something and put in my AirPods Pro. And I did enjoy watching content on it, but it didn't feel quite as immersive as the Note 20 Ultra or the Fold 2. It might just be iOS that doesn't take advantage of the extra screen real estate offered by the 12 Pro Max. There's several instances where certain elements within applications, like when I'm watching YouTube and I'm trying to turn on fast forward, or when I'm trying to shrink it from full screen, those elements are so small on the 12 Pro Max's screen that I actually miss it quite frequently. And I feel like an old man that can't see what's showing up on the screen. Then there's the lack of a high refresh rate on the 12 Pro Max. I won't complain about the fact that there are phones literally half the price that have twice the refresh rate, but I will say that on a larger display, it does matter more. And so I did notice it quite often that this display felt slower. And it's not because of the performance of the phone, just like before, it's an incredibly fast phone, but it just felt a little bit more slow. I'm guessing that Apple will fix this on the 12T or 13, whatever's next, but their sales numbers, their high sales numbers for the 12 series might tell them that most people don't care, and the average Joe can't notice the difference between 60 Hz and 120 Hz. Unsurprisingly, despite the 60 Hz screen, the phone itself feels incredibly fast and performant. Everything just flies, and there was never an instance where I felt I had too many apps open in the background or anything like that. Granted, I haven't noticed that with many modern phones at all, but I do know that this phone will probably last for longer than most of their flagships today, just because Apple is a lot better at performance that lasts. I was especially thankful of the fact that this phone was able to retain its battery for a longer period of time than my 12 Pro, unsurprisingly. But what was great is that the standby time was so excellent that I'd leave it in place for quite a few hours and then pick it up and hardly have lost any battery whatsoever. Even after years of owning iPhones, I still haven't figured out my home screen, and I appreciate being able to see all my applications on one screen and even be able to search alphabetically. I like that, and I'm glad Apple finally added it. I also appreciate that Apple now has widgets as well, which iOS seems to refresh on the home screen more often than Android does, and so as a result, I don't as frequently get weather that's 3 hours out of date on my home screen. Now frankly, I haven't found a ton of widgets that I really personally use, and I'm hoping that more mainstream applications start thinking of widgets to offer on their home screen. 3 examples that I can think of is I'd love to see a slice of my Twitter feed in a widget, I'd love to see what price my auctions are currently selling on eBay for, and I'd love to see all of the status of the packages that are being sent to me. Oh, and a bonus one is I'd love to see how my videos are performing on YouTube Studio. I'm hoping that widgets across Android and iOS will drive more developers to build widgets for both, and so we'll see more clever ideas. But I really don't want widgets to just become another feature that no one really utilizes. And another thing that I don't love about iOS is notifications. I really don't understand how even now we don't have a notification channels equivalent on iOS. I really want to be able to block certain notifications from Amazon and eBay and not get those frequent ad notifications, and still get notifications of where my packages are. And granted, in a lot of applications, I can actually go into the application and change this. Unfortunately, not all applications allow for that, and it's a lot more difficult to go into the application, find the settings for the notifications, and then turn off all those ad notifications, instead of just being able to action on the notification in the notification bar. Oh, and I'd also like a one swipe functionality to just clear notifications without having to open, manage, or view them, having this weird left swipe before I can clear something. Maybe it's just personal preference, but I go through notifications very quickly and I don't need to be able to manage, view them, or open them. And finally, what we've all been waiting for, the cameras. There are 3 12 megapixel cameras here, a standard, a wide angle, and a 2x telephoto. All 3 are absolutely excellent, as you'd expect. More so than previous years, iPhone photos pop. They have more vibrance and more saturation, and maybe sometimes a little too much exposure, but the detail's always there, which is excellent. The most standout feature for me on the 12 Pro Max is the ability to take portrait mode shots at night. Now, this has always been a difficulty for me because whenever I take portrait mode shots in like a dark bar or a dark restaurant, the shot usually comes out pretty bad, but that wasn't the case with the 12 Pro Max. I shot it side by side with my Z Fold 2 in a relatively dark neighborhood, and I got significantly better results out of the 12 Pro Max. But side by side with the S21, the results weren't as distinguished. This night mode shot at this bar was notably significantly brighter on the S21, which you could just say that's an exposure thing. But if you actually punch into the detail, you can see that the S21 captured a lot more detail than the 12 Pro Max. And then in portrait mode, I found that the 12 Pro Max wasn't quite as good at identifying what I'd like to catch in the focus versus out of focus as the S21, as shown in this picture of this plant. The 12 Pro Max is warmer and more appealing in this photo with so many different colors, so the 12 Pro Max has an excellent camera that trades blows with the S21, which is 6 months newer, but also significantly cheaper. I don't know if I had as game-changing as a photo experience on the 12 Pro Max as I expected to. With that larger sensor, I thought I would get more appealing and striking images like I had in my Note 20 Ultra review last year. But this camera is still absolutely incredible. I will say that 99% of the pictures that I took on the 12 Pro Max looked excellent. And with a little bit of tweaking and maybe a little bit more, oomph brought out of them, I would think that these pictures were just as good as just about any other phone on the market. The iPhone 12 Pro Max is an incredible phone with all the boxes checked to be absolutely excellent. And at $1,100, it's really not that more expensive than a lot of other smaller good phones on the market. Now, personally, I don't have a real need for a big iPhone like this, and I don't think it's really my first choice when it comes to iPhones. Personally, I'd like to try an iPhone 12 or an iPhone 12 mini because I want the smaller experience and I want a better price. But if you're looking for the absolute best that Apple has to offer and you're already ingrained in the Apple ecosystem, then the 12 Pro Max is an absolutely excellent option, and $1,100 is not bad. Thank you for watching InnoISO. I hope you like this review of the iPhone 12 Pro Max and it helps you make a decision on whether you want one. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my review of the iPhone 12 Pro and get subscribed so you can see my upcoming review of the S21. Let me know down in the comments what you think about the 12 Pro Max, and I'll catch you in the next one.